Billie Holiday almost starred in Gone with the Wind, but Hollywood's hidden racism stopped her. Studio executives who admired Lady Day's voice canceled their projects when they saw her skin color. MGM, Warner Bros., and Paramount, they all called Billie Holiday for casting, but none of them had the courage to give her a role. Today, I'm going to tell you Hollywood's biggest secret, how the film industry systematically blocked Billie Holiday, and the greatest performances in cinema history that we lost because of it. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel, because in the coming weeks, we'll be sharing other hidden racism scandals from Hollywood and lost film projects. In the fall of 1938, one of the most important meetings in Hollywood history took place. The production team for Gone with the Wind had gathered in David O. Selznick Productions' Beverly Hills office. They were searching for the perfect soundtrack for the film, and music director Max Steiner made a very interesting proposal. "I've heard Billie Holiday. This woman can bring Scarlett O'Hara's pain to life in her voice. We should have her sing the theme song for the film." Selznick was initially quite excited by this suggestion. Billie Holiday's reputation was already legendary in New York, and Strange Fruit hadn't yet become controversial. The producer team began making plans to bring Lady Day to Hollywood. In fact, in initial discussions, it was mentioned that Billie would be considered not just for music, but also for a small cameo role. Steiner had prepared extensive notes about Billie Holiday's vocal capabilities and how her unique style could enhance the emotional impact of key scenes. He envisioned Lady Day performing during the film's most dramatic moments, particularly the scenes depicting the devastation of the South. Her voice, he argued, could convey the profound sadness and resilience that the story required. Selznick's production team began preliminary budget calculations for bringing Billie Holiday to Los Angeles. They discussed accommodation arrangements, rehearsal schedules, and potential recording sessions. The music department started sketching out arrangements that would complement both the film's orchestral score and Lady Day's distinctive vocal style. Everything seemed to be moving toward what could have been a groundbreaking collaboration. But this excitement was very short-lived. Just 48 hours after the meeting, Selznick's assistant received orders to delete all Billie Holiday references from the project notes. Why? Because the studio's financial backers couldn't risk the film being boycotted in southern states. Having a black woman appear in an iconic southern film was seen as commercial suicide. The decision came down from the very top of the Hollywood hierarchy. Financial advisors had run projections showing that southern theater owners would likely refuse to show the film if it featured a prominent black performer. Given that Gone with the Wind was specifically about the antebellum South and the Civil War, the inclusion of Billie Holiday was deemed too provocative for the target audience. The potential loss of Southern box office revenue was simply too significant to ignore. This wasn't just an isolated incident. There was a systematic pattern in Hollywood in the late 1930s. Talented black performers would get initial interest but were systematically rejected in final decisions. Billie Holiday was one of the most tragic examples of this pattern because her artistic potential was truly exceptional. The pattern extended far beyond individual casting decisions. Hollywood had developed an entire infrastructure designed to exclude black performers from mainstream productions. This included everything from casting directors who were instructed to only consider white actors for leading roles, to scriptwriters who rarely created substantial parts for black characters, to marketing departments that believed integrated films couldn't be successfully promoted to mass audiences. The situation at MGM Studios was even more complex. Louis B. Mayer personally admired Billie Holiday's voice and invited Lady Day to the studio for a private audition in 1939. This audition was a legendary performance. Billie Holiday sang Summertime, and everyone in the room was moved to tears. Mayer immediately wanted to offer her a three-picture deal. The MGM audition had taken place in the studio's most prestigious screening room, with a full orchestra accompanying Billie Holiday. The session was recorded. Though these recordings would later mysteriously disappear from the studio archives, witnesses described Lady Day's performance as transcendent, with her interpretation of Summertime bringing several hardened studio executives to tears. Mayer himself was visibly emotional and began discussing potential film projects immediately after the audition concluded. MGM's creative department had already begun developing concepts specifically tailored for Billie Holiday's talents. They envisioned a series of sophisticated musical dramas that would showcase her vocal abilities while also allowing her to demonstrate acting skills. The studio's costume department had even begun sketching preliminary designs for her potential wardrobe, and set designers were considering how to create intimate performance spaces that would highlight her magnetic stage presence. The aftermath of this audition perfectly illustrates the dark side of Hollywood politics. Mayer's enthusiasm quickly cooled when the studio's Southern distribution partners made threats. MGM's biggest revenue source was Southern theater chains, and they explicitly stated they would boycott any film featuring a prominent black performer. Economic pressure completely overrode artistic vision. The threats from Southern distributors were not subtle. Theater owners in key markets like Atlanta, Birmingham, and New Orleans made it clear that they would not only refuse to show MGM films featuring black stars, but would also reconsider their relationships with the studio entirely. Given that these markets represented millions of dollars in annual revenue, the studio's board of directors quickly intervened to halt any plans involving Billie Holiday. The encounter at Paramount Pictures had started even more promisingly. Studio head Adolph Zukor had personally tried to recruit Billie Holiday for a multi-picture musical deal in 1940. Paramount's plan was ambitious: to create an all-black musical film series that would feature Lady Day as the starring vehicle. This approach seemed financially safer because it targeted the segregated market. Zukor's vision was actually quite progressive for its time. He had studied the success of all-black films in urban markets and believed there was untapped commercial potential in creating high-quality musical productions specifically for black audiences. The plan called for Paramount to produce a series of films with substantial budgets, professional production values, and wide distribution in northern cities where integrated entertainment was more accepted. Initial meetings were very encouraging. Paramount's creative team began developing scripts specifically tailored for Billie Holiday. Plotlines included biographical elements that romanticized her real-life struggles. Studio musicians were preparing arrangements for her vocal style. Everything seemed to be progressing toward Lady Day's Hollywood debut. The creative development process at Paramount was extensive. Writers crafted storylines that would allow Billie Holiday to perform a variety of musical styles while also exploring dramatic themes relevant to black audiences. The studio's music department began collaborating with prominent jazz arrangers to create sophisticated orchestrations that would complement Lady Day's vocal approach. Costume designers started developing wardrobes that would present her as both elegant and approachable. But this promising beginning also ended with sudden termination. After Paramount's board of directors reviewed economic projections, they decided that all-black musicals had limited profit potential. They redirected studio resources to projects targeting mainstream white audiences. Billie Holiday's contract negotiations were abruptly ended. The economic analysis that killed the Paramount project revealed the harsh financial realities of segregated entertainment. While all-black films could be profitable in certain markets, their earning potential was severely limited by the exclusion from white theaters and the smaller size of the available audience. Studio accountants calculated that even highly successful all-black productions would generate only a fraction of the revenue possible from mainstream films. The experience at Warner Brothers was perhaps the most heartbreaking, because there was initially very genuine interest. The studio's music division head was considering Billie Holiday for an integrated musical project, where she would collaborate with established white stars. This would have been a revolutionary approach in the 1940s, the first time a major Hollywood studio would attempt integrated casting. Warner Brothers' proposal was groundbreaking in its scope. The studio envisioned a major musical production featuring both black and white performers in equal roles, with Billie Holiday as one of the co-stars alongside established white actors. The project was conceived as a sophisticated entertainment that would appeal to urban audiences while potentially opening new markets for integrated films. Preliminary screen tests were actually conducted. Billie Holiday came to the Warner Brothers lot and worked with professional makeup artists, costume designers, and cinematographers. The test footage was incredible. Lady Day's screen presence was natural and magnetic. The camera perfectly captured her emotional intensity. These screen tests represented some of the most sophisticated footage ever shot of Billie Holiday. The studio's top cinematographers used innovative lighting techniques to showcase her expressive face and elegant bearing. Costume designers created several different looks to demonstrate her versatility, and the makeup department developed approaches that would translate her natural beauty effectively to black and white film. The fate of these screen tests was tragic. After studio executives reviewed the footage, they decided that Billie Holiday was too controversial. The test reels were locked in a vault, and the project was officially shelved. Decades later, this footage completely disappeared, likely deliberately destroyed because it constituted evidence of the studio's discriminatory practices. The destruction of these screen tests represented more than just the loss of potentially valuable footage. It symbolized Hollywood's systematic erasure of black artistic contributions.
Studio executives apparently feared that evidence of black performers' capabilities might create pressure for more inclusive casting in the future. By destroying the tests, they eliminated proof of what might have been possible. The situation at Columbia Pictures was slightly different, because Harry Cohn, the studio head, took a more business-oriented approach. Cohn recognized Billie Holiday's commercial potential, but was concerned about her controversies. In 1941, he invited Lady Day for a meeting, but attached conditions. She would have to clean up her image and avoid political songs. Cohn's approach reflected a paternalistic attitude common among Hollywood executives of the era. He genuinely believed that Billie Holiday could be successful in films, but only if she conformed to white expectations of how black entertainers should behave. His demands essentially required her to abandon the artistic integrity and social consciousness that made her unique. This meeting led to tragic misunderstandings. Cohn essentially asked Billie Holiday to compromise her artistic integrity. He told Lady Day to make safer song choices, adopt a less emotional delivery style, and most importantly, completely avoid social protest themes. Billie rejected these demands, and the Columbia deal never materialized.
The Columbia meeting lasted nearly 3 hours and became increasingly tense as it progressed. Cohn presented Billie Holiday with a list of appropriate songs she would be expected to perform and inappropriate material she would need to avoid. The prohibited list included not only Strange Fruit, but also other songs that addressed racial themes or social injustice. Lady Day found these restrictions artistically unacceptable and personally insulting. At RKO Pictures, she faced a different type of discrimination. Studio executives categorized Billie Holiday as a specialty act, meaning she could only appear in brief musical numbers, never as a leading character. This limiting approach prevented Lady Day from showcasing her full artistic range. RKO's classification system was typical of how Hollywood marginalized black performers. Specialty acts were essentially guest appearances that could be easily edited out of films when they were shown in markets where black performers were unwelcome. This practice allowed studios to claim they were providing opportunities for black artists while actually ensuring that these opportunities remained severely limited. RKO's proposal was insulting. Billie Holiday would make brief cameo appearances in major stars' films, typically typecast as a nightclub singer. No character development, no dramatic scenes, just musical interludes. This essentially meant not being treated as a talented actress. The RKO executives made it clear that they viewed Billie Holiday purely as a musical commodity rather than as a complete entertainer. They showed no interest in her potential for dramatic acting or her ability to contribute to character development. The proposed appearances would have been little more than extended musical performances with no connection to the film's narratives. The experience at Universal Studios was the most blatantly racist. Studio representatives openly stated that black performers could only be considered for servant roles. They offered Billie Holiday maid, cook, or other domestic worker characters. Lady Day understandably completely rejected these degrading offers. Universal's approach represented the most extreme form of Hollywood racism. The studio's casting directors made no attempt to disguise their discriminatory policies or to find creative ways to include black performers in meaningful roles. Their assumption that Billie Holiday would consider playing domestic servants revealed a profound misunderstanding of her artistic stature and personal dignity. The machinery behind this systematic rejection pattern was complex. The Hollywood studio system in the 1940s was tightly controlled, and major decisions were made by a few powerful executives. These executives consistently made conservative choices due to fear of losing the Southern market. The studio system operated as a cartel that effectively controlled all aspects of film production and distribution. A small group of studio heads met regularly to coordinate policies and ensure that controversial decisions made by one studio didn't create problems for others. This collaboration extended to maintaining racial barriers in casting, as integrated films could potentially create pressure on all studios to adopt more inclusive practices. Distribution networks were particularly problematic. Major theater chains in the South were strictly segregated and refused to show integrated films. This economic reality forced studios to avoid black performers, regardless of their artistic merit. The distribution system was structured in a way that gave Southern theater owners disproportionate influence over Hollywood's creative decisions. Because these theaters represented guaranteed revenue streams, their preferences carried significant weight in studio boardrooms. The threat of boycotts from Southern venues was often sufficient to kill projects that featured Black performers in prominent roles. Advertising concerns were also a significant factor. Marketing departments worried that promoting Black stars would be challenging because mainstream magazines and newspapers often had discriminatory policies. Print ads and publicity photos could be problematic in certain regions. The advertising industry's discriminatory practices created additional barriers for Black performers. Many magazines refused to feature Black entertainers in advertisements, and newspapers in certain regions would not accept promotional materials for integrated films. This made it extremely difficult to market films featuring Black stars to broad audiences. European markets were generally more accepting, but other international territories, particularly those with colonial histories, could be resistant to Black performers. Studios wanted to maximize global profits and preferred to avoid controversy. The international dimension added another layer of complexity to casting decisions. While European audiences were often more receptive to Black performers, markets in Asia, Latin America, and other regions presented uncertain commercial prospects. Studio executives preferred to create products that could be easily marketed worldwide without cultural complications. Billie Holiday was personally deeply affected by these rejections. Close friends later recalled that Lady Day missing Hollywood opportunities became her lifelong regret. She genuinely believed that acting could expand her artistic expression and help her reach new audiences. The personal impact of these rejections extended beyond professional disappointment. Billie Holiday had genuinely believed that her musical success would translate into film opportunities, and the consistent pattern of rejection deeply hurt her self-confidence. She began to doubt whether her talent was truly valued by the entertainment industry. The impact of these missed opportunities didn't just affect Billie Holiday's career, it also affected the entire film industry. Lady Day's unique artistic voice wasn't represented in Hollywood, and this was an immeasurable cultural loss. Audiences missed the chance to see extraordinary performances they could have witnessed. The cultural implications of Hollywood's exclusion of Billie Holiday extended far beyond the entertainment industry. Film was becoming the dominant medium for shaping American cultural narratives, and the absence of sophisticated Black performers like Lady Day contributed to the perpetuation of racist stereotypes and the marginalization of Black artistic contributions. Alternative history is fascinating to consider. If Billie Holiday had been featured in major Hollywood films, the civil rights movement could potentially have gained momentum earlier. Her screen presence could have made powerful social statements and influenced racial attitudes. The potential impact of Billie Holiday's film career on social progress cannot be overstated. Her dignified presence and artistic sophistication could have challenged racist assumptions and helped normalize the idea of Black performers in leading roles. The absence of such representation in mainstream cinema undoubtedly slowed the pace of social change. Contemporary Black actors and performers recognized that Billie Holiday's exclusion also limited their own opportunities. Hollywood's reluctance to feature prominent Black artists affected the entire community and created systematic gaps in artistic representation. The impact on other Black performers was immediate and long-lasting. Billie Holiday's rejections sent a clear message to the entertainment community that even the most talented and successful Black artists would be excluded from mainstream film opportunities. This discouraged other performers from pursuing film careers and reinforced the industry's discriminatory practices. The music industry was also aware of this situation. Record labels often discouraged artists from pursuing Hollywood because film rejections could damage musicians' reputations. This created a self-perpetuating cycle that created additional barriers. Record company executives feared that high-profile rejections from Hollywood could undermine their artists' commercial appeal in other venues. This concern led to an unofficial policy of discouraging Black musicians from seeking film opportunities, which further limited their career prospects and reinforced industry segregation. Independent film producers occasionally approached Billie Holiday, but their limited resources prevented them from creating professional quality productions. The race movies market existed, but it lacked sufficient distribution networks to achieve mainstream success. The independent film sector offered some alternatives, but these productions typically operated on extremely limited budgets and had minimal distribution capabilities. While some race movies achieved success within Black communities, they remained largely invisible to mainstream audiences and offered little opportunity for crossover success. Foreign film industries showed more interest. European directors particularly appreciated Billie Holiday's artistic sophistication, but logistical challenges and language barriers made collaboration difficult. Some preliminary discussions occurred, but concrete projects never materialized.
The possibility of international collaboration represented one of the few potential alternatives to Hollywood's discriminatory practices. European filmmakers, particularly in France and Britain, were generally more open to featuring black performers in substantial roles. However, the practical difficulties of international production in the 1940s made such collaborations extremely rare. The war period created additional complications. Hollywood was prioritizing patriotic themes and wanted to avoid controversial subjects. Billie Holiday's association with social protest songs further limited her wartime casting prospects. World War II paradoxically both opened and closed opportunities for black performers. While the war effort created some pressure for more inclusive representations of American society, it also intensified the demand for uncontroversial entertainment that would boost morale without raising divisive social issues. The post-war period offered some possibilities. The film noir genre was emerging, and darker, more realistic themes were becoming acceptable. Billie Holiday's voice and screen presence could have been a perfect fit for these atmospheric films, but opportunities remained limited. Film noir represented one of the few genres where Billie Holiday's artistic sensibilities might have found a natural home. The genre's emphasis on psychological complexity and moral ambiguity could have provided vehicles for her dramatic talents, while its urban settings and jazz-influenced soundtracks would have showcased her musical abilities. The emergence of the television industry could have created new possibilities, but early TV programming was heavily regulated, and similar racial restrictions were applied. Variety shows occasionally featured black performers, but dramatic roles were still largely inaccessible. Television's development in the late 1940s and early 1950s initially seemed to offer new opportunities for black performers, but the medium quickly adopted the same discriminatory practices that characterized Hollywood. Advertisers' concerns about Southern markets created similar barriers to integrated programming.
When the civil rights movement began making gains in the 1950s, Hollywood slowly began changing attitudes. But by this time, Billie Holiday's health was declining, and her prime performing years were behind her. The timing was a tragically missed opportunity. The irony of timing was particularly cruel in Billie Holiday's case. Just as Hollywood began to slowly open doors for black performers in the mid-1950s, her health problems and personal struggles made it difficult for her to take advantage of these new opportunities. The window of possibility that had been closed by racism was finally opening, just as her ability to walk through it was diminishing. When modern film historians study this period, they consistently conclude that Billie Holiday's Hollywood exclusion was a significant cultural loss. Her artistic potential was never fully realized on screen, and this represents a major gap in film history. Contemporary film scholars and cultural historians increasingly recognize the systematic exclusion of black performers like Billie Holiday as one of the most significant failures of American cinema's classical period. The absence of such important artistic voices fundamentally limited the medium's creative and cultural potential. Contemporary documentaries occasionally explore these missed opportunities, but the full scope of Billie Holiday's potential Hollywood career remains largely unexplored. Archive materials were limited because many records were deliberately destroyed. The deliberate destruction of archival materials related to black performers represents one of the most troubling aspects of Hollywood's racist legacy. By eliminating evidence of these artists' capabilities and the discrimination they faced, studios attempted to erase the historical record of their own discriminatory practices. This story shows us that artistic merit alone wasn't sufficient for Hollywood's success in the 1940s. Systematic racism was a powerful barrier, and even the most talented performers were affected by discriminatory practices. Billie Holiday's case was a perfect example of this tragic reality. The lesson of Billie Holiday's Hollywood exclusion remains relevant today, as the entertainment industry continues to grapple with issues of representation and inclusion. Her story serves as a reminder of the creative and cultural costs of discrimination and the importance of ensuring that artistic opportunities are available to performers regardless of their race or background. From a legacy perspective, Lady Day's music eventually achieved immortality, but her potential film career remained a forever lost opportunity. Modern audiences can only imagine the extraordinary screen performances she might have delivered if Hollywood had been more inclusive. The enduring power of Billie Holiday's musical legacy only makes the loss of her potential film career more poignant. Her ability to convey complex emotions through her voice suggests that she could have been equally compelling as a dramatic actress. creating performances that might have become classics of American cinema. If you enjoyed this video and are curious about other hidden racism stories from Hollywood, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Next week, we'll share the stories of other Black actors who were rejected before Sidney Poitier's breakthrough in the 1950s. Tell me in the comments, do you think Billie Holiday could have succeeded in Hollywood, or was it impossible during that era?